Good evening, folks, and welcome to this week's episode of Beer Rating with Sean Connors. As you can see, the beer I have this week is Port Rexton Brewing Company's Baycation Blonde. Just pour it up. A nice clear, almost like golden color. Not a bad aroma. A little bit about this one before we get going. It's a local brewery here in Newfoundland. It's in Trinity Bay, which is about 3 hours outside St. John's, give or take a bit. They've been around for a couple of years, I think 2016. They actually started up. This is their most popular beer. They call this their starter beer. They have a couple other more complex beers, an IPA and a porter, I believe, possibly a few others. And they say this is their starter beer. It's, after the area that they're in, they're known for their hiking. They say this is a nice after hike beer. It's cool, refreshing. It's actually an ale, but it's a blonde. Also, you might, if you hear of a golden or a summer ale, it's the same thing. Whether it's a blonde ale, a summer ale, or a golden ale, they're all the same. And as you can see, this one, it's golden type thing. The golden ales, the blonde ales, or the summer ales, whatever you want to call it, they're easy drinking ales. They're often confused with lagers. As you can see, it looks a little bit like a lager. It's clear, it's crisp, it's kind of like a lager. So it's an ale, but it's an easy drinking ale. A lot of people say it's a cross between an ale and a lager, but it's technically an ale due to the kind of yeast they use and whatnot. And usually they're well balanced between their hops and malt. There's nothing jumping out at you. It's round and smooth, they say. So I'll give it a taste. Not a bad taste. I was expecting more of a lager taste, but it's definitely got a bit of a ale taste to it, more so than a lager. It's a nice beer, actually. It's pretty well what they said. It's cool and refreshing. It's kind of crisp. Nothing overbearing. I'm actually quite fond of it. Now, as I said, the name is Baycation Blonde. And if you live in Newfoundland, you pretty well get the name right away. For those outside Newfoundland, I'll try to explain it a bit. In Newfoundland, we have people that live in the big cities, such as St. John's, Corner Brook, Gander, Grand Falls, and then everybody else who lives in the smaller communities. So if you live in the big cities, you're known as a townie. If you live outside the big cities, you're known as a bayman. However, most townies, well, maybe not most, but yeah, I'll say most townies can trace their roots to around the bay, and most of them still have family around the bay. That's what we say, we live around the bay. So a lot of times, people for their holidays, they'll go around the bay to visit family, the old homestead, whatever the case might be. So that's where the name comes from, Baycation Blonde. Now, if you're a townie who grew up in St. John's, you would say everybody outside St. John's is a bayman. However, people in the city of Corner Brook or the bigger areas outside St. John's, the bayman would actually consider them townies as well. So if you're from St. John's, you're definitely a townie. Everything else, it depends on who you talk to. So there you go. That's a townie bayman feud, more or less. I'm actually really enjoying this. It's kind of like a lager with a bit of a oomph to it. So it's an enjoyable beer, I must say. Alright, for this week's, my chat's going to be a quick one. You come home from work or come home from a long day doing whatever. You can't wait to get home. You want a cold beer. And then you get home and the beer's not cold. It was left out, whatever the case might be. So you want to get it cold. You can put it in the freezer, wait a couple hours, put it in the fridge, wait a couple hours, put it in the freezer, wait an hour or 40 minutes, whatever the case might be. There's got to be a quicker way, and of course there is. So I'm just going to talk about a couple quick ways how to get a warm beer cold. The first one would be with a CO2 fire extinguisher. Now this is not one I recommend, especially if you're in a hotel or a public place. I mean, a fire extinguisher is there for a purpose. However, if you have one yourself and it's not being used or you're about to refill it, to use a CO2 fire, now it has to be a CO2 fire extinguisher, that's a big one. The CO2 are normally the ones, they have the hose and the handle, they call it a horn on it. And the purpose of the horn is because when the CO2 comes out, it's extremely cold. So you protect it with what they call the horn, the little piece at the end. So if you got a CO2 fire extinguisher that's not being used as it should, you give it a couple quick sprays with a CO2 extinguisher and it gets ice cold. Now, as I said, a lot of them, they have the horn, the handle. Sometimes the beer might actually fit in the horn, and if so, put it in there, give it a couple squirts, and you're going to have it icy cold. Now, another one is compressed air. This is your typical compressed air that you get to spray your keyboard, whatever the case might be. A lot of times, if you're using this for any extended period of time, you might notice it gets cold, and you can use that to your benefit. One of the things they say, if you're going to use it, put it upside down, because when you spray this, it's a gas. However, you put it upside down, a lot of times it'll come out as liquid, and that liquid's really cold. So you could just give it a spray with, as it is right here, or the other option is find some type of container, say a Tupperware container or whatever the case might be, that you can fit a beer in, put a little hole in it that you can fit your straw in it, and give it a couple of squirts. As you can see, when it came out upside down, it's actually less gassy. The problem with this one is you're going to need at least a full can of compressed air, if not two. And this shit's expensive, so if you had to use it, you could, but I wouldn't recommend it. Other one is dry ice. You get dry ice, you use it to cool beer, or use it to cool your beer, it's going to happen pretty quickly. Another option, get a bucket, put some ice in it, a little bit of water, put your beer in there, jiggle around every now and then. It'll going to get cold pretty quick. Get it even quicker cold, add some rock salt to your ice. And what that does, I don't know the exact science, but adding the ice reduces the freezing temperature. So it gets colder quicker. And once again, just put it in a can of ice with a little bit of water, some salt, jiggle around every now and then, make sure it's getting coated. And that'll work, probably 5-10 minutes. Excuse me. The last one is you get a can of beer, you get a face cloth, a paper towel, whatever there might be something thin, or even paper towel. You get it, you soak it, and you soak it, but then you wring it out really good because you don't want it to be soaking wet. You just want it to be damp. And then you wrap it around the can. We'll pretend this is wet. Wrap it around the can, put it in the freezer. They say for 8 minutes, and you're going to have a nice cold beer. And what it is the paper will freeze because it's wrung out. It will freeze really quickly, and in the process, the beer itself is going to get cold. With that being said, I actually put one in the freezer about 8.5 minutes ago. Well, there you go. Just taken out of the freezer. Yeah, it's pretty cold actually. And this was soaked. And that beer is pretty well ice cold. And now I have an extra beer to drink. So there you go, folks. There's a couple of ways to get a warm beer cold quicker than just putting it in the fridge. Alright, back to the rating for this one. As I said, it's the Port Rexton Brewing Company's Baycation Ale, 5.2% alcohol. I think I might have said 5.3 there earlier, or 5.4, but looking at the can, 5.2. And my rating for this one. I think I'm fairly comfortable giving this one a 4.0. It's a very good beer. It's, as I said, normally 3 is good, 4 is very good. So I'm going to give this one a 4.0. I definitely try it again, and I'm actually going to drink this second one tonight. So Jamie, if you're watching this one, you missed out on this one, buddy. So I'm drinking mine and yours. So that's it for this week's. Once again, my Baycation Blonde, a 4.0. Cheers, folks. Until next beer, remember, enjoy responsibly. Cheers.